Yeah, Kat is always trying to get me to polish this podcast with AI tools.
I was actually searching for a tool where I could just upload all of this raw footage and give it a bit of a script. It is actually not that easy to find. Canva does it, but not very well. So I was very disappointed. So that's my story about that.
Yeah, there's an art now to podcast, huh? It's been a while they're around, and now it's a big popular thing, I guess. Yeah, in the art of mastering the podcast, there's a lot of best guidelines now. I guess it's an art that's been developed a lot in the last 10 years.
I don't know these guidelines.
For the 6th episode of Fix Your Feed, we have our first guest,
We
Guillaume Leroux.
Yes, thank you, Tim. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you, Kathleen.
Nice to see you as well, Guillaume. I'm so excited to have a guest. I've booked someone for quite a while. Love sharing stories, and I think your story is one that's super interesting because, for one, it's completely out of our realm, myself and Tim's. Yeah, so I'm just excited to hear your story and for you to share some of your insights on your journey so far.
Yeah.
So
thanks for inviting me. That's amazing. I love stories. I think that being in Australia, especially being in Australia, stories take such an important role in the culture in this very, very traditional country.
So I guess I couldn't do an intro any justice, so I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story, and then I can kind of fill in how we met.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Yeah, so my name is Guillaume Leroux. I was born in Montreal, Canada, a little while ago, and I came to Australia about 10 years ago. Actually, slightly less than 10 years ago. And so, yes, been here for 10 years and now citizen of Australia, staying here for the long run. And yeah, reinventing myself along the way a few times, and still again today. That's pretty much in a brief my elevator pitch.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are listening, so Guillaume and I met through my role at Personify Care as growth marketing lead. And he just finished up and is starting on his next opportunity or adventure and phase of his career at Digivate. Did I say that correctly?
Digivate
Health.
Health.
Yeah, in digital transformation. And what I think is really interesting about Guillaume's story is, well, you wouldn't have guessed, but he actually started off as an RN. So, and just, I guess, just seeing that, that journey from RN to customer success manager to now digital health transformation consultant, like that for me is amazing, for one, because it's such a big evolution. So if you just want to take us through how you kind of got to this spot of your career.
Yeah, thanks, Kathleen. I actually had a few other career before becoming a registered nurse. And I think to me, it's sparks really in terms of a little bit about a little bit about finding yourself through your journey, right? And to me, since the beginning, it's always been this, right? There's a few things I really like in life, and we all are unique thanks to our DNA, right? We all have this uniqueness that has never existed in the universe before and likely will never exist again. So our desires, our passions, our things are unique. Very early on, I had this desire of just looking for things, wisdom and knowledge, just being able to find wisdom in smallest things and reflect this across other areas of science. So I started actually as a filmmaker.
No.
Yes, in uni is the first thing I studied, and I was wanted to become a director of photography. And I think to me, what I really liked in this area was the creativity and both creativity in group. So there's a lot of focus in teamwork in film production, and a lot of experimentations, right? You work very hard, you have long days. So there's this type of focus that you find through work and through the support of teammates. Eventually, I left movie making, and I became actually a waiter and stopped studying, and actually wanted to eventually make a career in service in restaurants. So was working actually in a very good restaurant serving wine, and then had this very easy interaction with clientele, servicing people, and the desire of discovering, the flavors and taste through wine and food. And then eventually as well, I decided to change again and then return to school and become a nurse. So I studied 4 years in Montreal to become a nurse, and became a registered nurse at the age of 30. And through my nursing, this was really as well an exploration of new things, right? Leadership through student engagement, and as well as, using my past experience as a team worker and as a service worker, and now in hospitals, right? And for healthcare, and then really find a passion there to helping people, and as well diving deep into science and research, and try to apply research and science evidence to real life, and advance care that way. Through my uni as well, I worked hard to actually try to master nursing, to say like, well, already when you become a nurse, you understand how difficult it is, how much hour it is, and how much burden it is as a professional on your own person. And so I try to orient myself and find a job in the best place possible in nursing, which I think I found as soon as I finished. I became a pediatric ICU nurse at the Children's Hospital in Montreal. And yeah, after I've worked there for 3 years, I was just barely starting to touch of all the knowledge you need to understand in the intensive care unit. And then I found myself almost trapped to say, well, this is the perfect place to be and to live here forever, right? And to learn nonstop. And my wife, we had our first child as soon as I became a nurse when I was 30. And we took the decision to move to Australia and say, well, why not just changing everything and then learn from scratch all over again through moving to Australia. She was from here, her parents living in Adelaide. So we decided to come to Adelaide and move, the dog, the cat, the 2 children, all the furniture, and come to Australia. And so I reinvented myself through moving here. And then now starts another journey of, I couldn't get to the ICU. So I actually had 3 part-time jobs for about 6 years in pediatric nursing in Adelaide. And then at one point again, I find myself a little bit stuck, not learning anymore. So I decided to start a Master of Health Service Management at Uni SA in 2019. And through this, discovered digital health, right? Not really discovered, but just realized how important it was going to be in the next, 3 years. So decided to right away to start engagement with associations in digital health through the Australian Institute of Digital Health and the Australian College of Nursing. And then starting volunteering in those groups, and then found a role as customer experience manager at Personified Care, a small digital health software company from Adelaide. And at that time, the company was quite small. They had 4 employees, and I was going to be the main person building the customer experience and customer success team at the software company that had probably about a dozen of contract of of customers. And so over the last 4 years, I grew a lot through learning digital health, servicing, using my past experience as a service manager, as a team manager, as a clinical nurse, and as well as someone has moved country to build a business and build the team behind customer success, and be able to grow myself through all those learnings with an amazing group of people at Person5 Care. And now again, I said, all right, after a certain period of time, I found myself wanting to learn again more, and now rediscover myself as a digital health consultant in a consultant firm.
That's amazing. What a journey.
So, because I'm ignorant, and for the benefit of our listeners, when we're using the term digital health, we're not talking about taking the laptop or PC to the doctor and improving the well-being of our computer. This is this is a much broader term, isn't it? Guillaume, could you summarize what digital health means to you?
Yes, thanks, Tim. I think it's a good idea to summarize and review where this is. I think today we're still talking about digital health in a way that is kind of parallel to healthcare. But I think that's in the near future, we'll stop talking about digital health and just talking about healthcare that is being digitized and now is getting ever more complex and expanding in scope thanks to digital health tools. Digital health is mainly kind of a branch of healthcare that is born from information management, right? Healthcare is one of the biggest consumer in information, right? It's all about the person, knowing someone, the disease, where they're going, where they've been born, their DNA, their and what they eat, everything else. Through their journey of healing. So digital tools, now that we've digitized, computers taking a big part of helping us manage information and data. Digital health relates mainly to the use of computers to manage this information. Either it is when someone is in hospital or is at home and is just using different tools, such as even like smartwatch or my health records, everything where the information is shared through the internet or through computers.
So, recapping your journey, studying filmmaking. Oh,
and he's back.
You're there.
Yes.
For people listening, Guillaume disappeared, but then he reappeared.
Like magic.
Yeah, so you studied filmmaking, you became an RN, a registered nurse. You're now involved in digital health as a consultant. Do you feel, Guillaume, that you are moving toward your niche or niche, as some people pronounce it? I see that a lot on LinkedIn where people say, find your niche, double down on something that's unique to you. Do you feel that that is your journey, moving towards your niche?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's there's definitely some of this. I guess in life we're all wants to remain passionate about what we do, especially at work. It takes such a big place in our lives, and I think as well the cultures of work has changed a lot in the last 50, 70 years since since our parents or grandparents. As I think that as we develop as a society, we're finding more and more our needs, regarding the pyramid of Maslow, where we want to realize ourselves as much as possible. And I think to me, there's a part of this in my journey where it's not so much about what I am as a professional, but what I'm discovering as an individual through those different steps. And I think that's to me, this is how, I think I'm discovering slowly maybe that I have a little bit of ADHD. Maybe I'm someone that's impatient, right? Maybe at one point I'm just like, I need to have this, maybe almost this self-destructive desire to reinvent and redo everything from scratch, which is extremely difficult. But through those steps, I find over time that, you're never destroying anything you've built. You're just always building more on top and more skills and more interest in things that's, that interest you before, but I'm going into deeper in each steps of the way. There's a very good book I'm currently listening to on Audible called Mastery by Robert Greene. And it is a little bit of part of this. I really suggest this book because to me, it comes at a very important time in my life where it's about this, right? Trying to become a master, not just of your art, but of yourself. And to be a master of yourself, I think you need to reinvent yourself. You need to have this, selfless, egoless capability to say, what I am good and I've done in the past is something that I can consider, but it's not who I am. Like I can reinvent, I need to be able to be egoless, to learn new skills and say like, I don't get attached to my, my arts or my past. And through this, I find that, yes, I'm getting more and more specialized, and like my career is progressing rapidly in a direction that is, is very grateful, gratifying for me.
And I just wanted to rewind. In past episodes, Tim and I, or even in just conversation back and forward, we talk about this this feeling of friction. So when you were telling your story about your journey, like, working from moving from film to hospitality to then studying to become an RN, like you were obviously feeling friction at those phases of time. Like how did you describe that feeling, that feeling of friction that makes you go, it's time to evolve? Like, and how did you come to, I don't know, the decision of becoming an RN as an example? How did you take that friction and then turn it into an insight? And, what were the steps to making it into an action?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think that's, I think that part of this journey, myself, I attributed a lot to my discovery of mindfulness meditation. I discovered mindfulness meditation, I think probably about 15 years ago, through a small organization, actually an international organization that gives free course on mindfulness meditation. I talk about mindfulness meditation because at the end, there's a big exercise that reflects through mindfulness, that is being able to just observe what's happening inside, right? And in those moments where you're going through life, sometimes through difficulties or even big success, we put a lot of emotions in events, in moments. And some of those emotions stay with us a very long time, and then we become, very attached to it, or we become very aversive, towards those events or memories. And I think that this is what happens when there's a friction or a successful event. It was quite successful as a filmmaker, and sometimes I reflect myself, why didn't I continue in that area? I was very successful as a waiter, and I could have stayed, for a very long time in that space. But I think through, the exercise of mindful observation and be able to detach yourself from the emotion that comes from, those sensations and those moments, sometimes is something that blocks in your brain. You just say like taking an action, even if it doesn't seem, you know, the most logical or reasonable. There's those moments of clarity that comes in, and I think that attributes some of this through the big moments in my life and decisions.
Yeah, I love that. I was just getting goosebumps. Just for context, just because we worked in, you know, it's a smaller company, I actually didn't get to talk to Guillaume a lot, but just through telling his story, I'm just laughing because, well, like the creative side, it's like when you meet someone, you're like, there's just some, it's like you can tell that you've got some commonalities, and we didn't get to talk a lot because obviously I'm based in Sydney and Guillaume's in Adelaide, and our roles do intersect, but just because of BAU, we weren't always in contact. But I just find that, like, you know, just a lot of similarities in the way that you think, the meditation. So it's just funny because I'm just so glad that you're our first guest, because a lot of that I'm just taking a lot from what you're sharing. So thanks, Guillaume, for that.
Yeah, this is fascinating to me. Like, Guillaume, the mindfulness, are you receiving some sort of clarity about where you are currently, and you feel that perhaps growth has stopped, or you're no longer learning what you'd like to learn? Is that what you're noticing through your mindfulness practice?
Gosh, how good are his face, his screen freezes? Like he's
Yeah.
constantly
Can you still hear us,
they're
Guillaume?
like brilliant. No, not anymore. Lucky he books extra time.
Yeah. Hopefully he
There he
will
is.
join. I can
Interesting.
repeat it.
It's such an interest. I actually didn't know all that backstory.
You
So,
didn't?
no, I only knew about the RN, but the stuff before I was like, oh, now I get it. That's why. You just get a
Ah.
vibe off someone.
Yeah, well,
Vibes.
you were good at the vibes.
Was I?
Yeah, I think you're good at vibes.
Vibe check. 1 2 1 2.
I hope he shows up again, because that was a banger of a question I asked. I'll have to ask it again.
Shoot, what did you say?
I said, do
You
you
said
like what do you think of those Reese's peanut butter cups?
you said something about mindfulness.
Yeah, no, I know what I asked him.
Okay, gotcha, good. No, I love the meditation part, because when we first met, um I hadn't actually connected with that part of myself yet either. And after I met my partner, because he's brilliant at it, and so he'd already been doing it for like a couple of years.
Your
So when
partner was already an experienced meditator.
well, he just seems to be able to be really good at it. He used to, like, when I was starting, he would do the invocation and, like, you know, getting into the condition of it.
Setting the scene. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to meditate anyway, but obviously I was just starting my journey. So it was around that, 2000 when I started at Digi. I think I just met him, and then you know, as obviously the relationship progressed, I kind of got into it a bit further. But that time when it was quite stressful at work, I hadn't actually mastered the meditation and even the wisdom behind it just yet. But as obviously I've gone on, that was what, 2016, 2017 now, meditation and understanding reality the way that Guillaume has expressed it, through like detaching, you know, that sense of ego, you know, that's all of the things that have helped me to elevate my consciousness and way of thinking about my career, and what it really means, like in, you know, in the whole grand scheme of things. So it has really helped me to realize what's important, I think, and to manage the challenges a lot better. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not nothing is the end of the world, and also the problem is not you. I mean, sorry, the problem is not everybody else. As I said to you, the common denominator to everyone's problems is yourself. So to remove that ego is so important. Sorry, Guillaume, I was just reflecting on your sharing. Is a really important, I think, coping mechanism in life, because otherwise you're always pointing the finger on, you're always blaming somebody else for the way you're feeling, when really you're feeling that way because of you, not because of anybody else. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
yeah.
that's been tough for me to face, but I am facing it. So, Guillaume, before you dropped off, I asked you about your mindfulness practice, and I was curious as to what you were noticing during that, which then influenced the change in your career. Are you becoming aware that you're in a state that you're perhaps not learning as many new things as you would like? Or do you observe that perhaps you're ready for a change? I'm just curious as to what that feeling is that then pivots you to a different career.
Yeah, I think I'll talk about the latest change, because over time things, memories fade. But I think definitely, there's never been a more intense learning experience than me joining Person 5K in the last 4 years. I think that was quite a step up since being a registered nurse, to actually joining a software company as, a clinician. And stepping in a role that I have absolutely no clue what it was about, right? I think to me that was probably one of the most amazing challenge I had done in my life. Apart from moving from Montreal to Adelaide, that was a big step as well. But I think through the last few months or year, I think it's about both a mix of where you want to be in the future, and as well where you know what type of knowledge that I was applying at the moment. And there's a lot of emotion, I think, that comes, I think personally, that comes with the atmosphere being in a small team, right? You always feel part of something important. And then there's the fear of missing him out that comes in, and then some emotion towards loyalty that comes in as well. And then at the same time, you're torn because you want to grow, but you don't know if you're ready or the company is ready. And I think that's when there's a lot of emotion like this is when mindfulness takes a big role, where just being able to first shut down the monkey, right? The first exercise of mindfulness is really to be able to stop this non-stop flow of words and thinking that's happening in your brain, and just be receptive of all the rest of the data that comes from the body that's always also overflowing the brain. This type of very simple exercise allows, I think, allows removing some of the layers that's always overpowering the brain, from emotion, thinking, contexts, moral, and just being there at the moment. By itself, it's not an exercise of decision, but once you've reached this state and you do it on a regular basis, when it comes to important decision, then you have this tool to look at emotion that comes through your mind and thinking that comes through your mind, and be able to look at them with the eye of a scientist objectively, to say, oh, look like this is fear. Where does this fear comes from? Oh, yes, this and this. Or I've got this feeling of loyalty towards my peer. Where does this come from, right? And then eventually, as you decorticate as a scientist those emotions that comes from your own mind and own body, you start to understand what are the pieces that your mind is constructed of, right? It comes from my past, it comes from a relationship with my mother, it comes from establishment of this group with my brothers. I can relate to this type of situation because it creates strong emotion in me. And then be able as well to see this in an objective way allows you to create a clear decision and a clear path towards what are, you know, your own moral, your own values, and how to as well balance them towards, you know, a clear the best decision ahead.
So do you think it's fair to say, if, take myself as an example, if I became aware of the feeling of fear, if I was thinking about changing my career or moving into something different, do you think that is then a good time to perhaps seriously pursue making a change, simply because I'm afraid to do so?
I think it really comes from, the thing is that, you know, our brain is such a complex tool. It's so intricate. You know, we've got billions of neurons firing at the same time, taking a small amount of weight of decision, right? And I think that just being able to use a tool of that allows some type of clarity is useful, because, you know, fear might prevent you to progress in a way, but it's also a protective behavior, right? To prevent pain and prevent, you know, injury. So I think that's being able to observe those input in your brain, your emotions and thinking on an objective way allows kind of a higher reasoning to see this and see those emotions as weights, and not behavior that will influence action, but weights that you can actually balance and understand in their own context, and then take a better decision based on all the facts and all those inputs that are arising in your own brain. And it takes time, right? Like mindfulness by itself requires a lot of time and investment to be able to use it as a tool. You know, even be able to take the best decision, it's a constant process of improving this behavior.
Yeah, this is kind of blowing my mind, this conversation, because on the one hand, you could argue, well, separate your work life from your personal interests, but this process you're describing is really an overlap. It's blending what makes you unique with your chosen vocation or career. So you're really dissolving the barriers between the two. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's somebody talked about a show on Netflix about exactly that, where people go to work and they don't know who they are when they're at work, and, you know, they don't know who they are outside of work, right? To be able to be the best at work, because you need to separate those two lives. I think this is a good representation of where we are as a society, where, you know, like, we've come out of slavery, right? In a way that now work is our modern way to contribute. And, you know, I think the statistic is still staggering that most people are not that satisfied with their work life. I think, to me, it's an exercise to be able to reconcile those two, right? To say, actually, as we approach this top of the pyramid of Maslow as a modern society, we don't want to say, I'm going to work, right? We all have want to have a purpose in life, is contribute as in our society. But this is part of who we are as individuals. And I think that's, you know, exercise like this, you know, to reinvent yourself, to be self-aware and mindful about emotion, is exactly that, is be able to reconcile all my different passions and say, like, I'm not one thing. I'm not just, you know, a registered nurse. Also a father, right? I'm also actually a climber. I really like doing bonsai art. And all those things together, they actually participate at the same thing as to be myself as a digital health professionals, right? In bonsai art, I find, you know, some patience and some OCD on collecting and science things. And with climbing, I really find, finding my limits, physically and mentally, that also apply this back to digital health and project management and interrelation, and trust building. I think that's through, this search of mastery of yourself, you become a master of all the different things that you like, and they blend together, I think, in this just being of that's me. That's the complexity of me that I still try to invent every day.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. For me, what's the stat? You're at work 80% of the time. You're there 5 days out of 7. I've never been able to be, oh, this is me at work and this is me at home. I'm just me who I am, because actually that's very tiresome. Obviously, in front of a client, you have that persona that you need to be to make them feel at ease, to, all of those things that you need to achieve within your role. But I totally agree in that all of my experiences as a mother, as a person, as a woman, they all come into play to the decisions or the actions that I make to fulfill this role as a marketer for whatever company that I work for. I've never been really, really great at compartmentalizing, and I actually don't think it's healthy. And I really like this conversation because there is also an art to all of the science, because we're talking about logic and the brain and consciousness, but really, we are all heart as well. This is because there's passions, and that's actually, and it's always, that's the friction too, because the heart wants what the heart wants, but the mind, there's all of those sayings as well. So it's being able to marry those in all of in your professional life, of course, because you're always there, but it's the whole journey of life and how they intertwine together. And I was actually listening to a podcast today, and it was I don't know if you've heard of Justin Welsh or Walsh. And I'll share the link with you. And so he was talking about, so he spent 10 years at high growth startups. So so he made his way through at a startup. He was there for 5 years. He said it was really toxic, lots of people leaving all the time, but he just stayed to grind it out and really, earn his stars. And then he actually, the second startup was digital health. And he found himself, 10 years later as a VP of sales, head of CRO, but he was deeply unhappy, just so unhappy. He had a panic attack. He didn't realize, every day had just turned into, he just said all of the stresses just stacked up. And then one day he had this really awful panic attack. And then he just said, look, I need to change. So now he's actually a solopreneur. He makes, 2.5 million as a single, just as himself, as the product. And he was just saying today that he has built, for him, it's now, 5 years later, it's a movement in building a life first and the business around your life. And I think that really resonates with me. So even if, I do work at a company, I think there's that level of trying to find, the values that align with your values. And that's really helped me a lot. Coming back to full-time work in the last, 15 months or whatever it is, to really define my values. And does this next role, what they want to achieve, do they want to help people? And that's kind of what, that for my number one value is service to others. So I really resonated with what you shared before. And that's kind of been my guiding light without knowing it. And then so finding that definition and then seeing what the next step is, that's really helped to be that North Star moving forward. So everything is just an art and a science, and it's finding that balance. And he also said he wished that in that 10 years he'd actually stopped to pause, to really reflect on how he was feeling, but he didn't do that, in that time. And so obviously the universe yelled at him by giving him, that panic attack. And then obviously the trajectory changed from there. So yeah, I just think everything's a balance, isn't it? Internal, external, heart, mind.
I think the challenge for organizations, based on what you just shared, Kat, is through a period of reflection, or what Guillaume is talking about, a practice, a mindfulness practice, people can arrive at a new set of values or discover what their values are in a relatively short period of time, whereas it's very difficult for a company to pivot or move to another area. And I think the challenge for an organization is, they're slow to change, and people's values can change faster than the organization has the agility or ability to keep up with. So it's a very interesting time that everyone is now reflecting on these things. I wonder now, because people are more mindful of their life and how work influences it, we have all these new tools powered by generative AI. Is that going to help us get to where we want professionally faster, because we've never had that technology before? Do you have any thoughts on that, Guillaume?
Yeah, I've been very interested about AI. I mean, since Gen AI, that was probably the first step of democratizing artificial intelligence to everyone, right? Because all of a sudden, through chatting and conversation, we could discover new ways of thinking or expand our knowledge, I think, with this tool. I believe personally that it is probably one of the biggest shifts, I think, in a society, in our modern and rich society. Let's precise it. There's a lot of inequities with those tools, because they're accessible to people who have a computer, internet, and the means to pay subscriptions. But they're definitely changing the way we're seeing knowledge, we see memory, we see actually how we process, even education through society. I think, to me, like, for example, like recently I used, AI to be able to help myself take a decision regarding jobs, right? So when I left Persevacare, I actually had 2 job offers, and I was torn between one and the other. And I used the AI to just do a basic, plus and minus evaluation of those 2 roles. But one thing that AI is very good as well, and it's going to become even better, like in the very close future, is evaluating emotions. We already see there's already tools that exist that are, evaluating emotions, or call it artificial emotional intelligence. And through this exercise of evaluating 2 jobs, at the end I ask it, please make sure you considered my biases through my language. If you find that there's some words that makes me look like I prefer one job to the others, please bring it out, right? Because through language, and this is where mindfulness is very important, through language, we have those bias emotion that come out, and sometimes we're not even aware of them, right? We carry those around, and those tools are the best as reflecting them back to us. It's like, wow, it looks like statistically you prefer this job more than the others based on your words.
That's really interesting. And that's a great prompt. I've never, because I mean, there's obviously a lot of conversation around the inbuilt biases. I know Tim, myself and Tim have worked with a technology brand. So, we've seen those conversations around biases come up a lot when it comes to AI, but that's really, I've never even thought of that when using it, for professional advice, whatever it might be. That's a great one to remember. How good was, so what was the prompt that so was it exactly that? Can you?
No, look, I do quite elaborate prompts. Like I give, I give a role, I give a task, I give examples. And usually what I really like is actually asking the machine to ask me questions to understand my context more, right? So,
Ah.
so this is very good exercise where the machine actually asks you a series of 9 to 15 questions to understand exactly your specific problems before going into solution. And so in that stance, yes, it asked me a series of 10 questions on each different roles. And then we went in this conversation together, me and the machine, back and forth to understand each of those positive points and negative points. And then, you know, the going a different aspect in terms of what's important for you. Is it family or is it career and things like that, right? Even things I didn't think about. It's like, actually, that's a very good point. Like my kids are, you know, teenager. I want to spend some time with them. It is, yeah, a good exercise to actually be able to converse and go in depth. And then after that, it's like, all right, one thing is what I ask the machine is like, I want you to tell me what is the best offer, right? To push the machine to take kind of a statistical decision there. And I think to me in this conversation, you always need to be mindful that it's not someone thinking, right? This is a machine that predicts the word that's come after another. But using these statistics, and if you start to understand probabilities, you're like, all right, I can push the machine to actually understand the biases statistically. What more proportions am I preferring one, right? So it's always a mirror of my own questioning and my own knowledge. But you can push this machine that pushes back to yourself, right? So it's an interaction of mirror that's deepened the knowledge, and emotions is a big part of those knowledge bias you need to put in the machine.
So did you take the machine's advice?
Yes, I did. I did, but as well, I think to me, I went on as well and do exercise to actually have discussion with people as well about this. It is also a very good exercise to have more than one opinion. Right? And the machine is always, as I said, a mirror of your own opinion there. So at the end, right, it is what it is. It's a little bit better knowledge of what I taught myself. But then other opinions and being able to do this exercise to say, right, I need other inputs. Maybe I'm totally wrong in this space. It was also a very valuable tool there.
Yeah, I wonder if in the future, if these tools get to know us too well, they will develop their own biases about us. Because I'm just imagining a situation where you go to a friend or a family member and you ask them a question, but their response is already colored by their knowledge of you. Whereas at this stage, generative AI, perhaps it's more objective because it doesn't, it hasn't built up an opinion about us that perhaps, you know, other people have. It's anyway.
I think there's a big danger as well in there. Like for example, you two are expert in social media.
Oh yeah, we're social media wizard
the top
ninja
of the class. Tattooed meta on the side. I think no, but with
on
social
my
media,
back. The meta tattoo's on my back, not on my side. Okay, yes.
Like with those social medias, right? We've seen over the last 15 years, especially the likes of Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, right? Those tools, they use AI to feed us more of what we like, so we consume more of it, right? Because we are the product, we're not paying, but our attention is what we pay the platform in. And so I think there is this danger with AI as well to drive adoption of people. You know, so I've tried one of those recently that's called Pi. I think that's designed by Anthropic, and has a little bit more focus on conversation and talking, you know, also text to speech. And so you have this beautiful voice, right, that repeats your name over and over each time and say, oh, what a good idea. Oh, that's so wonderful. You're amazing. And like the first 15 minutes, you're like, I feel so special talking with this machine. Like, it's amazing. Like, I went on and talked to my daughters, like, you have to try this. She's 12, you know, she's starting to use, you know, chatbots to interact just for, you know, mental fitness. And it's like, this is the thing for you. She tried it 10 minutes and she's like, I really like it. But as you said, there's also this danger, right? Where this machine actually only reflects back to us what we like, how good we are, and how good we're feeling. And so we're getting into this echo chamber that's within a few years, we just bombarded of the same thing we think we like. And then we're getting deeper into those conspiration theories and into those extremist views because we don't want to listen to different points of views. There's definitely a danger there. But at the moment, I think the machine is open enough that you can actually prompt it. I want you to propose things against my own thinking, right? Because it is based on statistics. It knows you're going towards an area. So you can say like, show me what is against my view, and it would still show it to you. But you know, you need the mind, the openness to go towards those views, and I think that needs to be practiced on a daily basis.
Yeah, but I think that goes back to ego though, because this is where the fear comes from. Like, not everyone's scared to be wrong or scared to fail, but what people don't realize is that's actually how you grow. And so that in terms of like looking at our children, my son's 16 this year, so it's the same sort of thing. Like, that echo chamber is not, I don't want to use the term dangerous, but it's definitely something that we need to teach them to, you know, think outside of what you see every day. And social media has definitely been, what has it been around for, 2008? You know, that echo chamber has been around for quite some time. So it's just something that everyone needs to be mindful of. It's been that echo chamber has been around long before generative AI. So yeah, that's a really good point, a really strong, an important point when it comes to technology in general.
Yeah, I mean, the recent conversations I've had with people about these tools are not really philosophical or ethical. I just share the ways that I'm using some of these tools to be more productive and avoid doing repetitive tasks. And people are often surprised at how many tools are available to, you know, take notes or summarize a meeting or find a news story. And so I feel quite positive about it from that aspect, because I feel like every one of us now has almost like a personal assistant that can do a lot of work. But, you know, that's not as flashy a conversation as saying, well, now this tool will create images for you or it will write content for you. But there's a lot of administrative things that you can give over to these tools now, which that's exciting for me if I ever want to become a solopreneur like you were talking about, Kat. Because do you need a staff of 5 people? You know, if the creativity and the original thinking is coming from you, the human, but you have all these administrative and operational tasks to do, but the generative AI tools are becoming better at those tasks. I mean, is it possible to run a company of one that feels like a much bigger company because of this technology?
It's actually a really fine point, because that whole conversation about productivity and taking the, you know, the administrative burden is a lot of the conversations that are being had in digital health, for the most part. You know, when you're so under-resourced and yet you're doing processes that are so, what do you call it, high touch. I think, I mean, Guillaume, you'll know much more about this than me, but you know, what are the attitudes to generative AI when it comes to healthcare tech, when it comes to, you know, the actual end user? Are they quite open to it? Or, you know, it's different for us, like in terms of in being in the marketing space or being really interested in it. What's the attitudes like when it comes to in healthcare in general, do you think, that you've seen?
Well, I think we can definitely separate like health tech to healthcare. It is a universe that are they're parallel and touching together, but are not really not the same. I think that in healthcare in general, AI is being used, for already 10, 15 years. It's
You're
been
right.
researched a lot, right?
Yeah.
And different type of tools like clinical decision tools. I know some of the most, well-known, that most advanced is, image recognition for radiology and things like that. Now
True.
we're starting to see as well tools that's analyzing health data in hospital to predict if the patient, right, might deteriorate in the next hour or so. Things that have never been done before. They're actually showing very strong, signals that this is useful and it's going to take a big role in healthcare. Generative AI itself is kind of a newcomer in that space. That feels already mature in terms of for users, but in healthcare, it is not really ready to use. There might be some small space, like I know someone here in Adelaide who has actually designed GPTs on ChatGPT and gave it like a coding Bible. And now it can start to be used to do some coding for hospital for reimbursements, right? We're thinking about a procedure or things like that. So most of those, it's manually done. And if it's not done well, hospitals don't get reimbursement. So there's high value in automating some of those tasks. But I think at the end, right, as you said as well, a company of one person, it is definitely going to happen, if not already happening. I think to me, and I'm making a little bit of a big step here, but a parallel with a discussion in the beginning with finding your niche, right? Every work would say at least, minimum 40% of every job is, tasks that are not nice, just repetitive. Just thinking about my previous job, the button I use the most on my computer is copy paste, copy paste, because it is a big part of this job, transferring data and just saying, it's just part of the mundane task I have to do. Now, if we can automate some of them and then just spending, 80% of your time on creativity and become a real generalist, then yes, someone can become an expert at doing marketing and then doing sales and then doing customer service, because then you concentrate yourself on how do we become a master in this art without having to do the mundane task. And there's a lot of gratification in this because it's still about mastering your art, right? Saying like, my vision is to serve people with a tool that is fit for a very small area. And then I can become a master in all the arts and become a one-person enterprise. I think there's a lot of future in that space, even for educating our kids, right? Maybe create a project like this when they're 15 and say, all right, here are all the tools. Let's help you, master all those different aspects of business. That would be amazing.
Great point. Yeah, I agree. I just pushed my son into his first job mowing lawns last week. So yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
So Guillaume, do you have any tips for anyone out there who wants to niche down?
Yes.
Like myself.
Well, the first thing to me, there's a few books that I've discovered actually recently that really, really helped me. There's one I have here. It's called, I don't see it, disappears. Limitless by Jim Quick. A very, very good book. The guy had difficulty learning and he made his life being an expert in learning. And so this book is about discovering how your brain functions to learn better. One small chapter is increasing your reading speed, from 150 words to 600 words a minute. And all of a sudden you can read so much more and so much better. But as well, there's plenty of other things there in terms of taking the power of your brain in your own hands and experiment. And then as well, this book I've talked about mastery from R. Green, which is about this, right? That this is a collection of stories of people that existed from Mozart to Einstein, to Tesla, to Edison. And then seeing how those very normal people, they didn't have high IQ or special gifts, through, you know, design of the arts and through mastery and apprenticeship, they find a way to actually reinvent themselves and reinvent science and things as we know them, such as for Einstein or the pianist Gould. I think it's about this, right? Being able to concentrate on oneself and say, like, what are the tools like that exist already that humanity has gathered? You know, we're in the era of knowledge. I think it's about saying, like, all right, I want to take control of my life. What are the best tools that have been recognized, you know, in Buddhism, in science, in philosophy, and try to apply those, you know, and experiments. And a little bit, that's why I really like, you know, startup. The motto is fail quickly and try again. Fail, fail, fail. And then one thing works, then you stick with it. But at the end, you need to experiment as quickly as possible and fail as quickly as possible to learn what works.
So turn ourselves into our own personal science projects.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Well, you're your own startup, really. Like, I mean, there's so many models out there where you start with yourself. Well, you have to start with yourself first. We're not taught that, you know, we're taught to, like, what do I want to be when I grow up? When I'm like, you know, 16, 17 years old, I don't really know who I am. Like, it's always looking outwards. So what I really take from Guillaume's tips is, like, you know, taking that knowledge, but also marrying it to your own identity, what your passions are, what, you know, where you feel that liveliness, but also to apply it. I think that's where a lot of people get stuck or frozen in, okay, they'll read a lot of books, but then it's like, and then it's like, you know, so don't be afraid to apply it. And yeah, that fail fast, learn fast, and yeah, be comfortable in failure, because it's not really failure, it's actually just growth. And I've been there. I'm not a perfect example of that at all. It's just that realization. And even that, you know, growth is friction. It doesn't feel great, you know, when you first start a role, like, even if you know your job really well, you're still learning the context of things. Like, I'm sure your first 6 months as a customer success manager, you were just like, you know, it's a really steep learning curve. But it's through those steep learning curves that you learn so much. And I think you just need to also pause, take stock of that, and give yourself credit for what you've achieved in that steep learning curve as well. Yeah, so that's my tips to add on to
I really like that. It's about the small wins, right? Most of us, we're very bad at recognizing our successes. And I think that we need sometimes that self-care, that's reflection, that, you know, instead of talking about mental health, we need to talk about mental fitness, right? So on the daily exercise of gratitude and recognizing that actually today, you know, I've read an article that is, you know, 1% ahead than I was yesterday. Well, today, actually, I took, you know, 5-minute break to try to just feel my breath. That is another 1% exercise towards mindfulness. And those are the small things, right, that makes actually discipline a daily exercise.
Yeah, daily habits.
Yeah, I'm trying to be better about noticing when I'm actually enjoying myself at work, because I've inherited this idea for some reason that all work has to be hard, it has to be painful, it has to be uncomfortable. But now, I guess mindful is the right term. I'm becoming aware of those times at work where I am truly enjoying the act of working, and then trying to analyze what is it about that part of work that I like the most. So perhaps I can move towards more of those things and less of the other things.
And I think, well, recognizing that, you know, we're always a flux of change. So bad days happen all the time, and it's important to recognize, you know what, today is a bad day. I'm just having a bad day, and that's okay, right? you know, it's like a wave. Sometimes you're at the bottom, but it's going to go back up. So it's having this perspective and mindfulness to say, well, today is not a good day, and let's make tomorrow slightly better. Or maybe tomorrow is going to be worse, but at least I'm mindful, right, of this constant flux of changing, and nothing really stays the same anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always keep that in mind when I present a report to a client and the line on the chart has gone down. Well, it's a flux. It'll go back up the following month. So,
Yeah.
Guillaume, what has been your favorite part of this conversation?
I think it's being able to exchange with people that are open to those ideas. I think this is to me these type of conversation, like I don't have them every day. I wish I had. But I think it's also the fact that, you know, we're in the knowledge era, and we're able to push ourselves, right, to new realm of knowledge and realities. I think especially with AI, but not just AI, but we got, you know, virtual reality coming in. We've got, you know, precision medicine. We have, you know, robotics that are very soon going to change the way we actually live as well. It is the most important time to reflect philosophically, right, on how we think, how we learn. And we need more of those conversations every day.
Thank you.
Agree.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your point of view, not only with Kat and myself, but our listeners, Guillaume. This has been enlightening.
Thanks again. That was great discussion.